The council chamber was enormous, a sphere of transparent material that seemed to float in space. Inside, representatives from every major species sat in concentric rings, their seats arranged so everyone could see the central platform where speakers presented their cases. Deho had never felt so small. He stood on that platform now wearing his cleanest work clothes, very aware that he was a 67-year-old mechanic facing the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Beside him stood Jiwoo, and behind them a delegation of human officials who had arrived from Earth. But Deho had insisted on speaking first. This was his discovery, his responsibility. On the opposite platform stood Officer Vekrin and a team of Krell legal experts. They looked confident, prepared. They had charts and data displays ready. Deho just had the truth. The Council Arbiter, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix, spoke in a voice that resonated through everyone's translation implants. This hearing will determine the validity of human claims to precursor heritage. The Krell Dominion contests these claims. Park Deho of Earth, you may present your evidence. Deho stepped forward. He had practiced this speech 100 times, but now that he was here, the words seemed inadequate. So he decided to speak from his heart instead. I am not a scientist or a historian, he began. I am a mechanic. I spent 40 years maintaining ships, keeping them running when they should have fallen apart. I learned that good machines are built to last, and I learned that you can tell a lot about people by looking at what they build. He gestured, and a hologram of Mugunghwa appeared above the platform. This ship was built 11,000 years ago by humans. It was built to carry people to new worlds, to spread life across the galaxy. It was not built to conquer or to destroy. It was built with hope. The hologram shifted, showing the interior of the ship. Everything about this ship is human. The door frames are sized for human height. The controls are designed for 5-fingered hands. The life support systems are calibrated for Earth atmosphere. The language in the computer banks is Korean, one of Earth's oldest languages. He pulled up the genetic data. The DNA records in Mugunghwa's database match modern human DNA with 99.7% accuracy. The variation is no more than you would expect from 11,000 years of evolution. We are the same people, the same species. The precursors were human. Vekrin stepped forward on his platform. The evidence could be fabricated, a sophisticated hoax designed to elevate humanity's status. Deho shook his head. To fabricate this, you would need to create an entire ship using construction techniques that do not exist anymore. You would need to artificially age the materials to exactly 11,000 years using methods that work on every level, from radioactive decay to stellar drift calculations. You would need to invent a language that perfectly matches ancient human linguistic patterns. It would be impossible. Not impossible, Vekrin countered, merely difficult. The real question is why we should accept the word of one man and one ship. Where are the other colonies? Where are the other ships? If humanity was truly this advanced, where is the rest of the evidence? It was a good point, and Deho had known it was coming. He took a deep breath. They are gone. Most of them. There was a war. Mugunghwa's records call it the burning. Details are corrupted, but what we know is that human space was devastated. Earth itself was bombed. The colonies lost contact. And when you lose contact, when you lose infrastructure and education and resources, civilizations fall backward. He pulled up images from human history. This has happened to humanity before on smaller scales. Great civilizations that fell and had to rebuild. The difference this time was the scale. It happened across the entire galaxy. Humanity forgot we had ever been in space. It took us thousands of years to climb back. The council chamber was silent. Species that had always looked down on humans were now reconsidering everything they thought they knew. A council member from the Zivak species spoke up. Even if we accept that this ship is authentic, what does it change? The past is the past. How does this affect current law and territory? Deho had expected this question too. Under galactic law, precursor sites and artifacts belong to the descendant species if one can be proven. Humans are the descendants. That means every precursor site the Krell have been excavating, every piece of technology they have recovered, legally belongs to humanity. The Krell delegation erupted in protest. Vekrin's voice cut through the noise. This is exactly what we feared. This claim is motivated by greed, not truth. They want to seize Dominion assets. We want what belongs to us, Jiwoo said, stepping forward to stand beside her father. For decades, humans have been treated as newcomers, as primitive. We have been restricted from certain technologies, excluded from certain treaties, dismissed as unimportant. Meanwhile, the Krell have been excavating our ancestors' technology and claiming it as their own. That ends now. The Council Arbiter raised a crystalline appendage for silence. The legal implications are indeed significant. However, this hearing must focus on the central question: are humans the descendants of the precursors? All other matters can be addressed subsequently. For 3 days, the hearing continued. Scientists presented analysis of Mugunghwa's construction. Linguists examined the language databases. Geneticists compared ancient and modern human DNA. Historians debated the implications of the burning in humanity's lost age. The Krell fought every point, bringing their own experts, challenging every piece of evidence. But the more they challenged, the more the evidence held up. Mugunghwa was real. The data was authentic. Humanity's ancient legacy was undeniable. On the 4th day, the Council Arbiter called for final statements. Vekran spoke first, arguing that even if the evidence was real, it should not change current political arrangements. That stability was more important than historical accuracy. Then it was Deho's turn. He stood on the platform, exhausted from days of testimony, and spoke from his heart one final time. I understand the Krell's concern about stability. Change is frightening. But denying the truth for the sake of convenience is not stability. It is injustice. For my entire life I have been underestimated, dismissed, told that my people were lesser, and I accepted it because I thought it was true. He gestured to Mugunghwa's image. But then I found this ship, and I learned that my ancestors built wonders. They reached the stars when most species were still learning to use fire. They spread life across the galaxy. They created technology so advanced that even 11,000 years later, we are still trying to understand it. His voice grew stronger. But you know what I am most proud of? It is not the technology. It is not the power they had. It is what they did with it. They could have conquered. They could have enslaved other species. But they chose to explore, to build, to share. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. Humanity lost everything. We were knocked down to nothing. We forgot who we were. But we climbed back. We rebuilt. We persevered. That is what humans do. We do not give up. And now that we know our history, now that we understand where we came from, we will not be dismissed anymore. The chamber was silent when he finished. Deho stepped back, suddenly aware of how much he had revealed, how vulnerable he had made himself. But it was done. The truth was out there. The council deliberated for 6 hours. Deho waited with Jiwoo and the human delegation in a side chamber, barely able to breathe. Finally, they were called back. The council arbiter's voice filled the chamber. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, this council makes the following ruling. The vessel Mugunghwa is confirmed as an authentic artifact dating to approximately 11,000 years before present. The evidence of human origin is conclusive. Therefore, under galactic law, humanity is recognized as the descendant species of the civilization previously known as the precursors. Cheers erupted from the human delegation. Deho felt Jiwoo hug him, felt tears on his face, but he could barely process what was happening. The arbiter continued. However, the question of territorial and technological claims will require additional hearings. All existing excavation sites will be frozen pending further review. A joint commission will be established to determine fair distribution of recovered precursor technology. The Krell Dominion will maintain custody of artifacts currently in their possession until final determinations are made. It was not a complete victory, but it was a start. Humanity had been recognized. The old dismissals, the casual prejudices, the assumption that humans were lesser, all of that was now officially wrong. 6 months later, Deho stood in Mugunghwa's command center with a group of young humans. They were engineering students from across the galaxy, brought here to learn about First Exodus technology. Among them were also aliens, members of other species who wanted to understand the ancient human designs. The key to this power system, Deho explained, pointing to a schematic, is efficiency. The ancient humans did not just want power. They wanted sustainable power that could last for millennia. That is why this ship still works after 11,000 years. One of the students, a young woman named Sumi, raised her hand. Is it true that you were just a salvage worker when you found this ship? The moment Mugunghwa broke free from the docking clamps, Chaos erupted across Hanbit 7 station. Alarms screamed through the corridors, warning lights flashed red, and automated security systems locked down all airlocks. Through the view screen, Deho could see station security ships launching, their weapons powering up. Mugunghwa, can we outrun them? Jiwoo asked from the pilot station. Affirmative. Station security vessels are using standard propulsion systems. This unit's drive systems, even at 60% functionality, are superior by a factor of 12. The ancient ship accelerated smoothly, pushing away from the station faster than should have been possible for a vessel its size. The security ships fell behind almost immediately, unable to match the speed. But then Mugunghwa's sensors detected something else. Alert. Krell Science Cruiser Inheritor's Gaze is pursuing. Weapon systems active. Time to weapons range 3 minutes. Deho's heart raced. 3 minutes. Can we jump to FTL before they reach us? Negative. FTL drive requires 4 minutes 30 seconds to charge from cold start. Krell weapons will be in range 2 minutes before jump capability achieved. Threx looked up from the engineering console where he had been monitoring the ship's systems. The hull will not survive a sustained attack. These repairs are temporary. One good hit to the wrong section and we will decompress. Deho stared at the view screen, watching the Krell cruiser growing larger as it closed the distance. His mind raced through options. They could surrender, but the Krell would take Mugunghwa, and they would lose everything. They could try to fight, but the ship had no weapons. They could try to dodge, but even with superior speed, the Krell had superior firepower. Mugunghwa, Deho said slowly. You said your weapons are offline. Can we bring them online? Negative. Weapons require extensive repairs and full power allocation. Current power levels insufficient for both FTL preparation and weapons activation. What if we delayed the FTL jump? Use that power for weapons instead? Jiwoo turned in her seat. Dad, if we do that, more Krell ships will arrive. We will be trapped. I know. But if we run now, they will just follow us. And next time, we might not be so lucky. Before anyone could argue, Mugunghwa's voice spoke with what almost sounded like urgency. Incoming transmission from Krell Science Cruiser. Officer Vekran demands communication. Deho took a deep breath. Put him through. The view screen shifted to show a Krell officer. Vekran was tall and slender, with pale gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to see everything. His species was known for their intelligence and their ruthlessness. When he spoke, his voice was soft and precise. Unknown vessel, you are carrying stolen technology. By order of the Krell Dominion, you will power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in the use of lethal force. Deho stood up straighter, very aware that he was just an old mechanic facing down one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. But he thought of Mugunghwa's words about humanity, about how humans do not surrender. This is Park Deho, captain of the Mugunghwa. This vessel is not stolen. It belongs to humanity. It has always belonged to humanity. Vekran's expression did not change. Scans indicate this vessel utilizes precursor technology. All precursor artifacts fall under Dominion jurisdiction by Galactic Treaty. The precursors were human, Deho said, his voice steady. This ship is 11,000 years old. It was built by my ancestors. You have no claim to it. For the first time, Vekran showed emotion. His eyes widened slightly. Impossible. Humans have been in space for less than 400 years. That is what everyone believed, Deho said. They were wrong. There was a long pause. Then Vekran spoke again, his voice colder. If what you say is true, then it changes nothing. You are one ship with no weapons. Surrender now, and I promise you will be treated fairly. Your claims can be reviewed by the Galactic Council, but if you resist, I will destroy you. Deho looked at Jiwoo, at Threx. They both nodded. They understood the stakes. Mugunghwa, Deho said quietly. Broadcast our historical records. All of them. Every ship in the system, every station, every listening post. Show them the truth. Warning. Such a broadcast will prevent FTL preparation. This unit will be unable to escape. I know. Do it anyway. The ancient ship's transmitters, silent for 11,000 years, roared to life. Mugunghwa broadcast on every known frequency, sending out terabytes of data, images of ancient Earth, records of the first exodus, schematics of technology that predated all known civilizations, DNA records proving the genetic link between ancient humans and modern ones. Most importantly, it broadcast the dates, irrefutable carbon dating, radioactive decay analysis, stellar drift calculations. All the scientific proof that this human ship, was older than any other known artifact in the galaxy. The effect was immediate. Across Hanbit 7 Station, across every ship in the system, people stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens. They saw humans building cities when most other species were still primitive. They saw human ships exploring the galaxy thousands of years before anyone else. On the Krell cruiser, Officer Vekrin stared at his console, his face unreadable. Around him, his crew worked frantically to verify the data. But there was nothing to verify. The evidence was overwhelming. "Impossible," Vekrin whispered. But even as he said it, he knew it was true. The station's communication channels exploded with chatter. Every species had an opinion, and most of them were shouting at once. But one voice cut through the noise. It was Voral, broadcasting from the station. "Attention all vessels. Under Galactic Law, Section 7, Paragraph 12. Any species can claim inheritance rights to precursor artifacts if they can prove direct lineage. The data being broadcast by the Mugunghwa provides such proof. Therefore, this vessel is under human jurisdiction. Any attempt to seize it would be an act of war against humanity." Vekrin's face appeared on the screen again. "Station Chief Voral, you exceed your authority. The Dominion will not recognize these claims based on a single data dump." "Then take it to the Galactic Council," Voral replied calmly. "Let them rule on it. But until they do, this ship is under my station's protection as a registered salvage find claimed by a human worker." It was a bluff, and everyone knew it. Voral's station had no military power. The Krell could destroy them all with a single weapons barrage. But Voral had made it political. If the Krell attacked now, they would be attacking a claimed archaeological site before any official ruling. It would unite the other species against them. Deho watched Vekrin's face, saw the calculations happening behind those black eyes. The Krell officer was weighing his options, considering the political fallout, measuring the risk against the reward. Finally, Vekrin spoke. "Very well. This matter will be brought before the Galactic Council. But understand this, human. The Dominion does not accept your claims. We will fight you at every legal level. And if you attempt to flee before the Council makes its ruling, I will hunt you down." The transmission cut off. The Krell cruiser powered down its weapons but maintained its position, clearly intending to keep Mugunghwa under watch. Deho sagged in his seat, the adrenaline draining out of him. They had bought time, but at a cost. They were trapped here until the Council made a ruling, which could take months. And every moment they stayed, the Krell would be working to undermine their claims. "Incoming transmission," Mugunghwa announced. "Multiple sources. Human vessels throughout the sector are requesting communication." Jiwoo brought up the communication logs. Dozens of messages, then hundreds, then thousands. They were coming from everywhere. Human cargo pilots, human miners, human colonists on distant worlds. All of them had seen the broadcast. All of them had seen the proof that humanity was not new to space, that their ancestors had been among the first to explore the stars. One message was flagged as priority. It was from Earth itself, from the Human Colonial Authority. The message was simple. "Mugunghwa, this is Earth Command. We are sending representatives to your location. Hold position. Humanity stands with you." Deho read the message 3 times, hardly believing it. Earth Command had been dismissive of humans in the outer sectors for years, treating them as backwards and unimportant. But now, faced with evidence of humanity's ancient glory, they were rallying. Threx looked up from his console, his expression unreadable. "You know what you have done, yes? You have just rewritten galactic history. Nothing will be the same after this." "I know," Daeho said quietly. He looked around the ancient command center at the walls that had witnessed humanity's first steps into the cosmos. But it was always the truth. We just forgot it for a while. Over the next 3 days, the system became crowded. Ships arrived from every corner of the galaxy. Human ships came to protect Mugunghwa. Krell ships came to intimidate. Science vessels came to study. News crews came to document. The Galactic Council sent observers to investigate the claims. Daeho found himself at the center of it all. The old mechanic that everyone had laughed at was now the most important human in the galaxy. He gave interviews, answered questions from scientists, and tried to explain things he barely understood himself. Through it all, Mugunghwa remained patient, providing data and documentation to anyone who asked. The ship seemed almost happy to be speaking again, to be sharing the history it had preserved for so long. Daeho's hand shook as he sent the encrypted message to his daughter. He kept it vague, just asking her to come to the station early if possible. Jiwoo knew her father well enough to understand that he would not ask unless it was important. She arrived the next morning, her small cargo ship docking smoothly at Hanbit 7. Jiwoo was 38 years old, lean and strong from years of working in variable gravity environments. She had her father's stubborn jaw and her mother's sharp eyes. When she found Daeho in his usual corner of the sorting bay, she immediately knew something was wrong. "Dad, you look terrible. Have you been sleeping?" Daeho glanced around to make sure they were alone. "I need to show you something. But you have to promise me you will not react. No matter what you see," Jiwoo frowned. "You are scaring me?" "Good. You should be scared. Come with me." He led her through the station corridors to the maintenance shuttle bay. They flew across to Mugunghwa in silence. Jiwoo kept giving him worried looks, but she trusted him enough to wait for answers. When they entered the ancient ship and the lights activated automatically, Jiwoo stopped dead. "Dad, what is this?" "This is Mugunghwa," Daeho said quietly. "She is a human colony ship. She is 11,000 years old." Before Jiwoo could respond, the ship's voice spoke. "Welcome, Park Jiwoo. Genetic markers indicate familial relationship to inheritor Daeho. Access level granted." Jiwoo staggered backward, her hand reaching for the wall to steady herself. It spoke. It spoke in Korean. "Dad, what is going on?" Over the next hour, Daeho explained everything. He showed her the historical records, the images of ancient Earth, the technical specifications that proved humanity had once been the most advanced species in known space. Jiwoo listened in stunned silence, her face cycling through disbelief, wonder, and finally anger. "Why did you not tell me sooner?" she demanded. "This is the most important discovery in human history, and you kept it secret for 3 weeks?" "Because I needed to understand it first," Daeho said. "And because I knew that once people found out, everything would change. I wanted to have a plan. Do you have a plan?" "The beginning of one. But I need your help." He explained about the Krell sensors, about the limited time they had. Jiwoo paced the command center, her pilot's mind working through the problem. "Even if we could repair the drive, where would we go? Every station in this sector is monitored. Every planet has customs and security. Mugunghwa has coordinates," Daeho said. "Locations of the old colonies, supply depots, hidden facilities. Places that have not been touched in thousands of years. Places that might not exist anymore," Jiwoo pointed out. "Maybe. But it is our only chance." Mugunghwa's voice interrupted. "Alert. Krell vessel has entered the system. Designation Science Cruiser Inheritor's Gaze. Commander, Officer Vekran. Analysis indicates this vessel is equipped with advanced archaeological sensors. Probability of this unit's detection has increased to 87% within the next 48 hours. Daeho and Jiwoo looked at each other. 48 hours. That was all the time they had. "We need supplies," Jiwoo said, her voice taking on the crisp tone she used when piloting. "Power cells, hull sealant, replacement circuits. We need a team." "No," Daeho said immediately. "The more people who know, the more danger we are all in." "Dad, you are 67 years old. I am a pilot, not an engineer. We cannot repair an 11,000-year-old ship by ourselves in 2 days. We need help." Daeho wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He thought about the people on the station. Most of them had laughed at him, dismissed him as a washed-up old man. But some had been kinder. Some had simply let him work in peace. "What about Threx?" Jiwoo suggested. "I know he gives you a hard time, but he is a good mechanic when he wants to be." Daeho shook his head. Threx works for Vorel, he would report us immediately. Then who? Before Daeho could answer, the ship's sensors chimed. Alert. Unidentified individual approaching this unit's airlock. Biological signature indicates Vorel, station chief. Father and daughter froze. Daeho moved quickly to a wall panel, trying to power down the ship's internal lights, but it was too late. The airlock was already cycling open. Vorel entered the ship, his compound eyes reflecting the glow of active systems. The insectoid stood very still, his mandibles clicking slowly as he processed what he was seeing. So, Vorel said finally, the old human found something interesting after all. Daeho stepped forward, putting himself between Vorel and the command center. Vorel, I can explain. Explain what? That you activated a derelict without reporting it? That you have been secretly working on it for weeks? Vorel's voice was hard to read, but Daeho thought he detected amusement rather than anger. I knew you were up to something, Daeho. You are a terrible liar. Are you going to report us? Jiwoo asked, her hand moving to the toolkit on her belt. Not a weapon, but it could be improvised as one if necessary. Vorel tilted his head, studying them both. That depends. What is this ship? The sensors are reading power signatures I have never seen before, and the hull composition is unusual. Daeho made a decision. They had no choice now but to trust Vorel or fight him. And Vorel, for all his flaws, had always been straightforward in his dealings. It is a human ship. It is over 11,000 years old. It proves that humanity was in space long before any other known species. Vorel was silent for a long moment. Then his mandibles spread in what Daeho recognized as shock. The precursors. The ancient ones that the Krell are always searching for. They were human? Yeah, Mugunghwa's voice said, startling Vorel. This unit represents First Exodus technology. Humanity's first wave into the stars. Vorel stared at the walls, his mind clearly racing. Daeho watched him carefully, trying to predict what the station chief would do. Would he see this as a profit opportunity? A political advantage? Or would he simply hand them over to the Krell to avoid trouble? How much is the Krell paying for information about precursor technology? Vorel finally asked. Daeho's heart sank. Of course. It always came down to money. But Vorel continued. Because whatever they are offering, it is nothing compared to what this ship is really worth. If the humans have proof of First Exodus heritage, if they can claim precursor status under galactic law, it changes everything. The political implications alone are worth more than all the salvage in this sector. Daeho blinked. What are you saying? I am saying that having humanity as a precursor species is good for business. Right now, the Krell control most ancient site excavations. They charge enormous fees for any technology recovered. But if humans are recognized as the precursor's descendants, then all those sites become human territory. Do you understand what that means? War, Jiwoo said quietly. Eventually, yes. But in the short term, it means opportunity. It means humanity goes from being seen as newcomers to being seen as inheritors of the galaxy's oldest civilization. And it means anyone who helps humanity achieve that recognition becomes very valuable. Daeho studied Vorel carefully. The insectoid was ambitious and greedy, but he was not stupid. And right now those qualities might be exactly what they needed. The Krell are already here, Daeho said. Officer Vekran arrived this morning. He will find this ship within 2 days. Then we have 2 days to make this ship functional enough to leave. What do you need? Daeho pulled up Mugunghwa's repair list on his tablet. It was extensive. Power cells, conduit replacements, structural supports, fuel for the reactor, supplies to patch the hull breaches. The list went on. Vorel studied it and clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. I can get most of this. We will claim it is for standard station maintenance. But we cannot move it all at once without attracting attention. I can help, Jiwoo said. My cargo ship can transport supplies. Multiple small trips will look less suspicious than one large one. We will need more hands, Vorel said. I can assign Threx to your team. I will tell him it is a special salvage project. Threx will ask questions, Daeho protested, and I will tell him to follow orders. Threx may be annoying, but he knows how to keep his mouth shut when it matters. Over the next 36 hours, they worked around the clock. Threx arrived with the first load of supplies, grumbling about being assigned to work with the old human again. But when he saw the ship's interior, saw the technology that Mugunghwa represented, his attitude changed. This is not scrap, Threx said, his scaled hand running over a control panel. This is art. This is engineering beyond anything modern. It is human, Daeho said quietly. It is what my people built when we first reached the stars. Threx looked at him with new respect. Then your people were masters. I am sorry I laughed at you, Deho. They worked together, the old human and the young alien, installing new power cells and replacing corroded conduits. Jiwoo made run after run, bringing supplies and avoiding the Krell science cruiser that now orbited the station. Vorel ran interference, keeping Officer Vekran busy with station tours and false reports about precursor artifacts found in other sectors. But time was running out. On the second day, Mugunghwa detected Krell sensors beginning a detailed scan of all docked vessels. They had hours, not days. Drive systems are at 60% functionality, Mugunghwa reported. Hull integrity is at 81%. This unit can achieve FTL, but the jump will be unstable. Recommend destination within 5 light years. Deho could barely breathe. He stared at the glowing corridor, at the lights that had not shone for millennia, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. The voice had called him Child of Earth and spoken in Korean. Ancient Korean, yes, but he could understand most of it. Mugunghwa? He said quietly, testing the name. Can you hear me? Affirmative, the voice responded. This unit's primary systems are now online. Secondary systems require additional time for full initialization. Current power levels at 32% and rising. Deho looked around the corridor nervously. He needed to understand what was happening, but he also needed to be careful. How long have you been dormant? Approximately 11,743 years, accounting for relativistic time dilation during drift period. The number hit Deho like a physical blow. Nearly 12,000 years. Humans had barely been recording history that long ago. What are you? What is the first exodus? There was a pause as if the ship was deciding how to answer. Accessing historical database. Warning. Significant data corruption detected in temporal archives. Reconstructing from redundant systems. Deho waited. His legs felt weak, so he sat down on the corridor floor, his back against the ancient wall. Through his suit radio, he could hear the normal chatter of the station. Workers joking, cargo being moved, the everyday sounds of life continuing as normal. None of them knew what was happening here. Reconstruction complete, Mugunghwa finally said, displaying summary data on nearest functional screen. A panel in the wall lit up, showing text in ancient Korean characters with images alongside. Deho's translation implant struggled with the oldest words, but he could piece together the meaning. 12,000 years ago, humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel. Not the crude FTL drives that modern species used, but something more elegant. The details were beyond Deho's understanding, but the results were clear. Earth had sent out colony arcs, massive ships designed to seed new worlds with human life. Mugunghwa had been the 7th such arc. It had successfully established colonies on 9 different planets before disaster struck. There had been a war. The details were corrupted, but Mugunghwa's log showed massive conflicts across dozens of systems. Something called the Burning had devastated human space. What happened to Earth? Deho asked, his voice barely a whisper. Unknown. Last contact with Homeworld was 11,912 years ago. Final transmission indicated catastrophic bombardment. Earth's defense network was offline. No further data available. Deho felt tears on his cheeks. He had known, of course, that human history had gaps. There were periods called the Dark Ages where records were lost or destroyed. But this was different. This suggested that humanity had risen to greatness once before, only to fall so far that they had forgotten they had ever been in space at all. The colonies you established, Deho said. What happened to them? Unknown. This unit was damaged during the burning and entered emergency hibernation mode. Navigation systems failed. This unit drifted until power reserves depleted completely. This unit has no data on colony fate. Deho stood up slowly, his mind racing. If Mugunghwa had established 9 colonies and there had been other arcs, then there might be human populations scattered across the galaxy that had lost contact with Earth. Populations that might have evolved separately might look different now, or populations that had died out entirely. Why did you activate for me? He asked. Why now? Genetic scan confirms human ancestry with high probability match to original colonist database. Blood sample contained viable DNA markers. This unit is programmed to respond to human presence. This unit has waited for an inheritor. You are the first human to find this unit in 11,743 years. The weight of that statement settled on Deho's shoulders. He was the first. The first human in nearly 12 millennia to hear this ship's voice. The responsibility was enormous. "Can you move?" he asked. "And can you fly?" "Negative. Main drive systems require extensive repair. Hull integrity is 78%. Weapon systems are offline. This unit is not space-worthy without significant maintenance. However, this unit's knowledge databases are intact. This unit can provide technical specifications for First Exodus technology." Deho's engineer mind immediately understood the implications. If Mugunghwa's databases contained the original human FTL drive designs, the weapon systems, the colony ship technology, it would revolutionize everything. Humans would no longer be seen as the newcomers, the primitive species that barely understood the technology they used. But it would also make this ship incredibly valuable. Dangerously valuable. "Mugunghwa, I need you to stay quiet for now. Can you power down to minimal systems, just enough to maintain our communication, but not enough that the station sensors will detect you?" "Understood." Reducing power signature. Entering stealth mode. Warning, this unit recommends caution. Historical records indicate other species may attempt to claim this unit if they learn of its existence. "I know," Deho said quietly. He looked at the ancient walls around him, thinking of all the workers back at the station who had laughed at him. They had thought he was just an old mechanic wasting time on scrap. They had no idea what he had found. Over the next 3 weeks, Deho developed a routine. During his regular work shifts, he acted normal, sorting salvage and avoiding attention. But every night he returned to Mugunghwa. The ship was a patient teacher, and Deho was an eager student. Mugunghwa showed him the history of the first Exodus. Showed him images of Earth as it had been 12,000 years ago, already covered in cities and reaching for the stars. Showed him the faces of the original colonists, humans who looked just like modern humans but who had possessed technology that seemed like magic now. The ship also taught him practical things. It showed him how the ancient FTL drives worked, how they manipulated space-time in ways that modern drives could only approximate. It showed him weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand stars, construction techniques that allowed buildings to stand for millennia. "Why did it all disappear?" Deho asked one night, sitting in what had been the ship's command center. "How did humanity forget all of this?" Speculation. The burning was comprehensive. Earth was attacked. Colonies lost contact. Without faster-than-light communication networks, isolated populations would regress. Technology requires infrastructure, education, resources. A planet stripped of these would fall backward rapidly. Deho nodded slowly. He had seen it happen on a smaller scale. Small colonies that lost contact with supply lines, that had to focus on survival rather than advancement. Given enough time, given enough desperation, people forgot the old ways. Earth survived, though, Deho said. We climbed back. It took thousands of years, but we made it back to space. "This unit is pleased," Mugunghwa said, and Deho could swear there was genuine emotion in the synthetic voice. "Humanity persists. This is consistent with all historical records. Humans do not surrender." On the 21st night, Deho arrived to find Mugunghwa's systems running at higher power than usual. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately. "Sensor alert. This unit has detected unusual scanning patterns targeting the station. The frequencies and modulation are consistent with Krell Dominion military-grade sensors. They are searching for something specific." Deho felt his blood run cold. The Krell Dominion effectively ruled half the known galaxy. They were powerful, ruthless, and obsessed with maintaining their technological superiority over other species. "Are they looking for you?" "Probability high. The Krell have long sought First Exodus technology. Historical records indicate they discovered fragments of human artifacts before. They call them precursor relics. They do not know the precursors were human." Deho paced the command center, his mind working through the problem. If the Krell found Mugunghwa, they would take it. They would take it, and they would strip it for technology, and Deho would never see it again. Worse, they might delete the historical records, might destroy the only proof that humanity had once been great. "How long before they detect you?" he asked, unknown. "This unit's stealth systems are First Exodus technology. They are superior to modern sensors. However, if they perform a physical inspection of this unit, they will detect the active power signature. Estimated time until inspection, 3 to 7 days. 3 to 7 days. Not enough time to repair the ship. Not enough time to move it," Not enough time to do anything except watch as everything he had discovered was taken away, unless he did something desperate. Mugungwa, Deho said slowly. If I could get you enough power and enough spare parts, how long would it take to get your drive systems working? Not perfect, just working enough to jump to FTL. The ship was silent for a long moment. Estimated time, 48 hours with optimal conditions. Warning, probability of successful repair with available resources, 23%. Warning, jumping without full diagnostics risks catastrophic drive failure. 23% is better than 0, Deho said. He took a deep breath. We are going to need help. He thought of his daughter, Jiwoo. She was a cargo pilot currently running supplies between stations. She would be at Hambit 7 in 2 days. He thought of Vorl, the station chief who only cared about profit. Park Deho wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the massive shape floating outside the station windows. The derelict ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of any vessel currently docked at Hanbit 7. Its hull was dark and scarred, covered in burns and impacts from weapons that had fired thousands of years ago. Nobody knew where it came from or who had built it. The old mechanic was 67 years old now, with gray hair and wrinkles that came from 4 decades of hard work. He had spent most of his life maintaining human vessels during the integration wars, back when Earth was still fighting to prove itself among the alien species. Now he worked at this orbital salvage station, sorting through scrap metal and broken parts. It was not glamorous work, but it kept him busy. Station Chief Vorl clicked his mandibles together in what passed for laughter among his species. The insectoid alien towered over Daiho, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh station lights. We are sending it straight to the smelters, Vorl announced to the gathered workers. The metal alone will fetch a good price. Daiho stepped forward carefully. Perhaps I could examine it first? There might be salvageable components or technology worth studying. The other workers burst into laughter. Threx, a reptilian alien with blue scales, slapped his workbench. The old human wants to play archaeologist. What will you find, Daiho? More of your primitive Earth junk? Even Mila, who usually kept to herself, allowed a small smile. She was from a water world, and her species considered themselves the finest engineers in the galaxy. No offense, Daiho, but if our scanners found nothing valuable, what makes you think you will? Vorl waved a claw dismissively. Fine, fine. The old human can waste his time if he wishes. You have 1 week, Daiho, then it goes to scrap. Do not damage anything that might reduce its metal value. The other workers went back to their tasks, already forgetting about the conversation. Daiho simply nodded and gathered his tools. He had learned long ago that words meant little. Work was what mattered. That evening, Daiho took a small maintenance shuttle across to the derelict ship. Up close, it was even more impressive. The hull, plating was unlike anything he had seen before. Yet something about it felt strangely familiar. He ran his hand across the surface. Despite millennia in space, the metal was not brittle or corroded. Whatever alloy this was, it had been built to last. He started at the stern, methodically cleaning away the accumulated dust and micrometeorite damage. This was slow work, the kind that younger workers had no patience for. But Daiho had always believed that you could not truly understand a machine until you had touched every part of it. On the 3rd day, he noticed something odd. The hull plating was not random. There were patterns in how the panels connected, mathematical relationships in their sizing. He pulled out his tablet and started taking measurements. The ratios were familiar. They were based on the same principles that Earth's old colony ships had used, back before the integration. Daiho sat back, his mind racing. Earth's colony program had started over 300 years ago, but it had been small and limited. Humans were newcomers to space travel compared to species like Mila's people, who had been exploring the stars for 5,000 years. Yet this ship was far older than that. The dating analysis had put it at roughly 10,000 years old. He continued his work, now with renewed focus. On the 5th day, he found symbols etched into a panel near what he guessed was the ship's engineering section. They were worn and faint, but when he cleaned them carefully, his breath caught in his throat. The symbols were numbers. Human numbers. More specifically, they were written in a style that resembled ancient Korean mathematical notation. His hands shook slightly as he traced the symbols. This was impossible. Humans had barely been in space for a few centuries. How could human writing be on a ship that predated recorded history? That night, he could not sleep. He kept thinking about the symbols, about the hull patterns, about the way the ship's architecture felt somehow right to him in a way that alien vessels never had. The next morning, he went back earlier than usual. He spent the entire day searching for more clues. He found them. Small things that anyone else might have missed. A door frame that was exactly the right height for a human. Hand grips spaced for 5-fingered hands. A corridor width that matched human ergonomics perfectly. On the 7th day, his deadline, Daeho made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden beneath layers of damaged armor plating, he found an interface port. It was clearly designed for direct access, but the shape was wrong for any modern connector. He stared at it for a long moment, then slowly raised his hand. The port was shaped for human fingers. His heart pounded as he carefully cleaned around the port. There was a panel next to it with a small depression, like a scanner of some kind. Without really thinking about why, Daeho pressed his hand against it. Nothing happened. He sighed, feeling foolish. Of course nothing happened. The ship had been dead for 10,000 years. He was an old man seeing patterns that were not there, trying to make himself feel important by imagining mysteries. As he pulled his hand away, a sharp piece of metal caught his thumb. He winced and pulled back, watching as a drop of blood welled up and fell onto the scanner panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the panel began to glow with a soft blue light. Daeho stumbled backward as the glow spread, running along lines in the hull he had not noticed before. Deep inside the ship, he heard something. It was a sound he knew well from his decades as a mechanic. It was the sound of systems powering up, of a machine waking from a very long sleep. Lights flickered on in the corridor ahead of him. Old lights, but they still worked. The air itself seemed to hum with energy. Then, from speakers he could not see, a voice spoke. It was slightly distorted by age, but the words were clear. More importantly, they were in Korean. Ancient Korean with an accent he had never heard before, but unmistakably the language of his ancestors. Inheritor detected, the voice said. Genetic markers confirmed. Welcome, child of Earth. This unit is designated Mugunghwa, Colony Arc 7 of the First Exodus. Awaiting orders. Daeho stood frozen in the corridor, his mind unable to process what he was hearing. Behind him, through the airlock window, he could see the lights of Hanbit 7 Station. Inside the station, everyone was going about their work, laughing and joking, completely unaware that everything they thought they knew about human history had just changed. The old mechanic everyone had laughed at had just woken something ancient, something that had been waiting for 10,000 years to speak to a human again.